All right, let's start off. Let's dive into the economic chaos which has been triggered by the ongoing US-China trade war, now taking an even more dramatic turn under President Trump's latest tariff moves. We break down the 5 key takeaways to help you make sense of this tariff tango. Over to you, Jyotsna.
All right, thank you so much, Shivan. All right, let's start by taking a look at the 5 major points. Let's begin with stock markets worldwide that are tumbling, with Asia seeing the worst of it. Tokyo's Nikkei 225 plunged 5%, while U.S. stocks saw wild swings, falling sharply after early gains. Now, in commodities, crude oil has dropped to a 4-year low, facing its worst 5-day slump in 3 years. This comes as fears of a global recession rises. In response to Trump tariffs, top Chinese brokerages are now pledging to stabilize the domestic market, ramping up efforts to counter the financial fallout from the escalating tariffs. Now, Ethereum and Bitcoin saw significant losses, with Ether leading the charge down, losing over 6% in just one day. And in a new twist, President Trump is set to announce major tariffs on pharmaceutical imports, impacting stocks in India's pharma sector, especially those heavily reliant on U.S. exports. Now, that's your quick roundup of the Trump trade war, on one that continues to rattle economies around the globe. Well, over to you, Shiva.
Thanks, Jyotsna, for getting us the latest on that. Of course, there's lots to discuss at this point with the conundrum that we're in regarding tariffs. To discuss this further, from Kuala Lumpur, I'm being joined by Collins Chong Yu Keat, who's a foreign affairs and security strategist at the University of Malaya. Collins, thank you so much for joining me here on the broadcast. At this point, Collins, do you feel these tariffs actually will revive the U.S. industry, or will they just raise consumer prices? Because consumers in the U.S. are extremely concerned at this point, as per reports.
Well, we have seen how Trump has, pledged to correct past mistakes. Past leaderships have practically ignored this problem for decades now. And he has said this before, and he's doing this now to ensure that, America is wealthy again, to bring back revenues, to bring back manufacturing jobs. And of course, there are some concerns on the impact of this move on the, escalation of prices or inflation and all that. But, they have also argued that markets will eventually adjust, and that despite the potential short-term reactionary measures in place, we have seen how Trump's measures in the long term will bring cutting back on taxes, on regulations, also the energy boom with oil and gas resources now booming under his administration. And this will eventually adjust, and that the long-term stability and the long-term positive impact country to Americans and eventually to the world will be felt in years and decades to come. This is the central premise of what Trump has been doing. Of course, he has also said that this is a temporary needed measure in place, some sort of a medicine for the long endemic disease that has plagued both the U.S. and the world over. So I would say that this is, of course, unprecedented move, but it's a needed move to ensure that there's stability, there's fairness in global trading system. As J.D. Vance has also recently stated that America has been buying Chinese products and goods using Chinese capital. America has been borrowing from China to buy Chinese goods, and this is not something that you want to do in the long term. So I think it's a good reset of the whole system. We will be feeling the aftermath of that in the coming months. But in the long term, it will be good for America and the world.
Collins, and as you mentioned, unprecedented moves. I think the world was prepared for certain moves, seeing how Trump, the first administration, was. But at this point, if I were to just take that same scenario and look at it from China's perspective, do you think there is going to be some manufacturing disruption there in China? Because, Xi Jinping definitely will be getting hit in terms of manufacturing. Do you feel the move will lead to joblessness in China?
For sure, because we have seen, even before the tariff is in place, for years, for the past couple of years, we have seen this exodus of major firms moving out of China to countries including India, to Southeast Asia, to Vietnam, to Malaysia. And with these new terms in place, and with the tariff, the 104% now, I foresee that, this will be enhanced in terms of the speed of this exodus of these firms, and probably to Southeast Asia, to a certain extent, maybe to Mexico. But most of this will be back to the US, as what Trump has said, that one of the primary objectives of this move is to ensure that firms are returning back to the US, to invest in the US, to get the jobs back to the US, and this will escalate the existing internal security and internal economic dilemma and crisis that China has been facing for the past couple of years now. And this will worsen also the unemployment crisis that they have been facing, as well as, of course, the structural economic, crisis, as well as also on the debt crisis and the real estate problem that they've been facing for the past couple of years now. Now this will be worsened by the tariff war. And despite what Xi Jinping has been saying, that they will, in their own national interest, they will defend to the last mile in terms of this trade war.
Yes.
I don't see them winning this trade war, at least under Trump.
Let me just come in there. There's no denying the fact that China has been a major manufacturing hub. They've known for the kind of mass production that they're able to put out, and of course how that brings down costs. But at this point, you feel the US can scale production fast enough to replace China's massive role in the supply chain?
No, we have to remember that this decades-long rise of China have been mostly fueled by at the expense of America. We have seen how China has been also manipulating its currency, the trading system. Ever since it joined WTO in 2001, we have seen the skyrocketing rise of the Chinese economy, and at the expense of the day-to-day Americans. And Trump has been right in saying that this has to stop, and that it is time now for America to reset its trading system, and for the world to pay its fair share to America. Now that America has been at the forefront of global stability and security for decades now, and that this is the first step that Trump has been taking, which would not be taken by anyone else before this. And of course, this is going to be the first step, and we don't foresee results to pour in immediately. But I foresee that due to this tariff alone, as well as all the other measures in place by Trump, including cutting back on regulations, including incentivizing firms to move back to the US, and with the existing potential future prospects of this demographic potential, including on human capital, on infrastructure, on making America eventually great again, this will be serving as the incentive for firms to eventually send out their factories and their hubs back to the US.
So no instant changes in the short term. There are changes that you're anticipating in the long term. Definitely, it's an unprecedented move. You do not stand against what Trump is doing, something that only Trump could have done, the kind of disruption he has caused at this point. But in terms of the long term, there is going to be a certain shift, a kind of tilt that could be happening, especially when it comes to the supply chains. There is a lot to look out for. Thank you so much for joining me. That was Collins Chong Yu Keat joining me from Kuala Lumpur.
Thank you.